He gave bread to an orc girl. No one would help. Then everything changed. On the coldest market morning of early winter, the people of Bracken Hollow pretend not to see the orc girl sitting in the mud beside the old stone well. She is too large, too proud, too frightening for anyone to pity. Her travel cloak is torn, her braided dark hair half fallen loose, and though hunger has hollowed her face, there is still something dangerous in the way she holds her silence. Merchants turn away. Guards laugh. Even the beggars keep their distance. Only Bren stops. He is a poor baker with flour on his sleeves and barely enough bread left to feed himself until morning. Yet he tears his last warm loaf in half and kneels before her. He expects anger. A threat. Rejection. Instead, the orc girl lifts her eyes and Bren sees something far worse than rage. He sees shame. And before the next dawn, that single piece of bread will change both their lives forever. Bren lives in the narrow, tired edge of Bracken Hollow, where the streets turn to mud before they ever become proper stone. His bakery is small, old, and always a little too cold by morning. The roof leaks when it rains. The back wall leans just enough to worry him in strong wind. Still, it is his. He inherited it from an uncle who left him more debt than comfort, and ever since, Bren's life has moved in the same quiet rhythm. Wake before dawn, light the oven, knead the dough, stack the loaves, carry them to market, return home with 2 few coins and start again the next day. He is not the kind of man stories usually choose. He is not a swordsman, not a lord's son, not secretly destined for greatness. He is simply steady, thin from missed meals, strong from labor, gentle in ways the town does not value. People know him as honest, useful, forgettable. He lends bread on credit and rarely gets paid back on time. He lowers his voice when wealthier men interrupt him. He keeps his head down because pride has never kept anyone warm. That morning in the market, when he sees the orc girl by the well, he recognizes something he knows too well, the look of someone trying not to let others watch them break. She is impossible to ignore once he truly looks at her. Even seated in the mud, she carries the shape of strength. Broad-shouldered, taller than any human woman, with heavy braces partly hidden beneath a torn travel cloak. Her skin, dulled by dust and cold, still hints at the deep green of forest shadow. One side of her jaw tightens each time she swallows, as if pain lives there. A dark braid hangs over one shoulder, thick as rope, though half of it has come loose from a long road and worse nights. She is clearly hungry, clearly exhausted, and still she does not beg. When Bren offers her bread, she looks at him like an insult has been placed in her hands. For a moment, he thinks she might throw it back at him. Instead, after a silence sharp, enough to cut, she takes it. Not softly, not gratefully. Her fingers close around the warm loaf with visible restraint, and she tells him in a low, rough voice not to mistake need for trust. Bren, embarrassed by the attention gathering around them, only nods and steps away. But the moment has already become public. Whispers move through the market like spilled oil. Fool, orc lover, mad baker. By late afternoon, the story has spread farther than the bread ever will. When Bren returns to his bakery after sundown, carrying unsold crusts and a sack of stale grain, he finds her again, this time in the alley behind his oven shed, half collapsed against the wall. She is still conscious, which somehow makes it worse. Fury burns in her eyes at being seen like this. She must have tried to leave town quietly and failed before she reached the road. Bren hesitates, not because he wants to leave her there, but because helping her further means stepping into something he does not understand. Up close, he notices things he missed before. Beneath the road grime, her clothing is not common gear. The leather is thick, reinforced, stitched by skilled hands. The metal clasp at her shoulder bears a symbol, partly scratched, but still visible, a wolf's jaw curved around a crescent blade. Not merchant work, not soldier's issue either, something noble or dangerous or both. He offers his arm. She refuses. He brings out his handcart. She glares at him as if she would rather freeze than be pitied by a human baker. But when she tries to stand and nearly drops to one knee, something in her expression changes. Not softness, calculation, survival. She climbs into the cart without thanks, clutching her cloak around herself like armor made from pride alone. Inside the bakery, the warmth of the brick oven turns the silence between them into something close and uneasy. Bren offers the narrow bed in the back room. She chooses the floor by the oven instead. He gives her water, old broth, and a blanket he pretends he does not need. She accepts only the water at first. Later, when she thinks he is not looking, she drinks the broth too. When he asks her name, she pauses just a little too long before answering. Vara. It is not her true name. Bren knows that immediately, though he cannot say why. Maybe it is the shape of the lie. Maybe it is the way she says it without belonging to it. He does not challenge her. Outside, the town settles into night. Inside, the oven crackles low. Bren rolls out a blanket near the work table, meaning to sleep lightly. Before he closes his eyes, he notices one last thing. Though she looks half-starved, one hand remains tucked beneath her cloak, resting on the hidden hilt of a knife. And before dawn, someone carves a single warning into the wood of his front. Dr. Morning comes hard and grey over Bracken Hollow, and with it comes the full price of Bren's kindness. He finds the word carved into his bakery door before sunrise, the letters deep and ugly in the wood. He stares at them while the cold bites through his sleeves. For a few seconds, he says nothing. Then he reaches for a rag and tries to scrub the insult away as if it were only soot. It does not come off. When he turns, he finds the orc woman standing in the doorway behind him, wrapped in his spare blanket, watching in silence. Her face reveals almost nothing, but her eyes sharpen. She has seen marks like that before, not childish cruelty. A warning, a declaration that the town has already chosen what story to tell about them. Bren mutters that people in Bracken Hollow talk too much and think too little. He tries to sound calm, but shame and anger sit badly on him. He has spent years surviving by being unnoticed. Now the whole town has a reason to look directly at him, and none of those looks will be kind. The orc woman says he should send her away before the rumors become worse. Her voice is cold again, controlled, almost formal. It sounds less like concern and more like a shield being lifted back into place. Bren answers that she can barely stand properly, and she snaps that her weakness is not his burden. He replies quietly but firmly that it became his burden the moment he put food in her hands and opened his door. The words surprise both of them. Their arrangement remains uneasy. She stays, but only because leaving too early would kill her pride faster than the road would kill her body. Bren works the bakery as always, though now the air around him feels changed. Customers come less often that morning. A few who do arrive glance past him, clearly hoping to see the orc inside. One woman refuses to buy bread from hands that have served monsters. A pair of boys laugh as they pass the door. Bren pretends not to hear, but every lost coin presses against his ribs like another stone. Inside, the orc woman keeps to the back room near the oven, where heat eases the trembling that sometimes catches in her hands. Bren notices more now. She measures every movement, conserving strength. She does not limp exactly, but she favors one side when she stands too quickly. At times, her breathing goes shallow, as though something deeper than hunger still burns inside her. Yet even weakened, she carries herself like someone born to command. She studies the room the way soldiers study exits. When Bren leaves a bowl of porridge on the table without comment, he returns later to find it empty. He says nothing. That evening, while he struggles to lift a cracked flour sack onto the shelf, he discovers it already moved, the torn seam neatly tied with cord. He knows at once who did it. Again, neither of them mentions it. The silence between them begins to change. That night, while he kneads tomorrow's dough, she finally speaks first. She asks why he stayed in a town that thinks so little of him. Bren, surprised, gives the simplest answer he has. Because ovens do not move easily, because debt follows, because leaving costs more than staying. She watches his hands pressing into the dough and says that humans build their lives like nests, fragile things of warmth and habit. Bren, half amused, asks whether orcs do not. She answers that orcs build fortresses, not nests. Bren says a fortress sounds lonelier. For the first time, something like humor flickers at the edge of her mouth, faint and gone almost at once. Later, he notices her staring at the old wooden peel hanging by the oven. She asks what it is made from, and when he tells her ashwood, she nods as if storing the knowledge for some private reason. Then her gaze drifts toward the shuttered window, toward the dark street beyond. Bren follows her look and understands. Before she speaks, she is not only hiding from the town, she is waiting for someone to find her. The days that follow settle into a strange, careful rhythm, as if the bakery itself has agreed to keep their secret a little longer. Bren wakes before dawn to light the oven, and each morning he finds some small task already done. Firewood stacked, closer to the hearth. Water drawn before the pump line grows crowded, the bent hinge on the back storeroom door forced quietly back into place. The orc woman never points to these things, never asks for thanks, but Bren notices every one of them. He begins to understand that even in weakness she cannot help but be useful. Strength is woven too deeply into her to let her sit idle. She remains guarded, she gives little away. Yet now and then, pieces of her appear between silences. She dislikes sweet porridge, but eats hard crusts without complaint. She sleeps lightly, one hand always beneath the blanket, near the knife hidden at her side. She never turns her back fully to a door. Once, when a cart crashes loudly outside, Bren sees her on her feet before he can even rise from the bench, body tensed for violence. Before thought can catch up, whatever drove her here, it did not leave her gently. In the town, things worsen. The insult carved into the door becomes only the beginning. A stone breaks the front window 2 nights later. Children whisper when Bren crosses the square. 2 regular customers stop buying from him altogether. The village priest, who has never once bought a loaf on credit, pauses long enough to suggest that hospitality toward the wrong creature can become a kind of moral weakness. Bren listens in silence, then turns away before his temper says something. His empty purse cannot afford. That evening, she asks him why he endures humiliation so quietly. Bren is kneading rye dough at the work table, arms dusted in flour, shoulders aching from work and stress. He does not answer right away. At last, he says that shouting has never fed him, and pride has never paid for wood. Most days, survival asks for patience more than defiance. She studies him with narrowed eyes, as if this kind of endurance is harder for her to understand than courage in battle. In her world, insult demands answer. In his, answer often makes things worse. Their difference sits between them like a third. Presence in the room. Later that night, as rain taps against the shutters, Bren finds her sitting close to the oven, cloak loosened, face pale with strain. One hand presses hard against her ribs. He does not crowd her. He simply kneels by the shelf, gathers dried fever leaf, bitter root, and the last of a calming bark his mother once used in winter sickness, then begins to steep them in hot water. She watches him with visible suspicion. "You think human weeds can mend me?" He shrugs. "I think pain is pain, no matter who feels it." For a moment she says nothing. Then, with obvious reluctance, she accepts the steaming cup. The smell alone makes her grimace. She drinks anyway. By morning, the shaking in her hands has eased. That changes something. Not trust. Not yet. But the first hard edge of dismissal begins to crack. She starts asking questions she did not ask before. Why does he score the dough before baking? Why does he save stale crusts instead of tossing them? Why does he always leave one lantern lit in the window after dark? Bren answers simply, the cut helps the loaf rise properly. Stale bread can become soup, and light matters when a person comes home tired. She goes quiet after that last answer, and he realizes too late how much loneliness lives inside the ordinary things he says. A few evenings later, when Bren returns from market, he finds the heavy grain sacks already hauled. Inside before the rain can spoil them. He knows no human in town would have done him that kindness. In the back room, he sees her sitting with her eyes closed, breathing carefully through obvious exhaustion. The effort cost her. Still, when he thanks her, she only mutters that weak. Doors and wet grain offend her. He smiles before he can stop himself. She notices that small smile unsettles them both more than anger ever has. Then the hidden truth deepens. A travelling tinker stops at the bakery for day-old bread and glances once, only once, at the metal clasp near the orc woman's folded cloak. His face changes at once. He says nothing while she's near, but as Bren walks him out, the man grips his sleeve and asks in a whisper where he found someone wearing the mark of House Karzag. Bren tries not to react, but the name lands heavily. The tinker tells him in hurried fragments that Karzag is no minor family. It is an old orc warhouse, feared in the north, bound to command, blood oaths and clan law. A woman bearing that mark would not be a discarded guard. She would be someone people kill for or kneel to. When Bren goes back inside, the room feels smaller. He asks her, quietly now, what House Karzag is to her. For the first time, she does not dodge the question. She lifts her gaze to him, and all the weary distance in her face sharpens into something older, harder, and far more dangerous. It is my blood, she says. The words settle like iron between them. Before Bren can ask anything more, a sound rises outside from the dark alley beyond the bakery wall. The scrape of boots, low voices, and then a phrase spoken in the orc tongue. She is already standing. All softness leaves her expression. Her hand goes to the knife. Her breathing steadies not because the danger has passed, but because at last it has arrived. Then she says, in a voice colder than Winterstone, "They found me." The first blow against the bakery door does not splinter the wood, but it shakes the whole frame hard enough to rattle the hanging pans. Bren freezes where he stands. Across the room, the orc woman is already moving. All weakness disappears from her posture in a single breath. Whatever pain has haunted her for days is still there, but now it is buried beneath training, instinct, and something colder than fear. Another Udar comes, heavier this time, followed by a voice from outside, speaking in the orc tongue. Deep, formal, controlled, not a bandit's voice, not a drunkard's, someone disciplined, someone who expects to be obeyed. Bren does not understand the words, but he understands the effect they have on her. Her face hardens, her shoulders pull back. The guarded stranger who sat by his oven is suddenly gone, and in her place stands someone larger than the room itself, someone born for command. She looks at Bren and says only, "Do not open that door." He nods, though his pulse is already hammering hard enough to make his hands shake. He reaches for the thick wooden peel by the oven, not because it is much of a weapon, but because holding something feels better than standing empty-handed. Outside, the voice calls again, this time in rough human speech. "Varaka of House Karzag, surrender the token, and the human will live." Bren feels the name strike the room like a throne blade. Varaka, not Vara, not a caravan guard. Not a road-worn stranger with no past. Something in him is startled by the lie, but not wounded by it. He understands now that a hunted person survives by deciding what truth others are allowed to touch. Varaka closes her eyes for one brief second, as if hearing her full name spoken aloud costs more than she will show. When she opens them again, she is utterly clear. "There is no time left," she says. "You need to go out the back, now." Bren stares at her. "And leave you?" "Yes." "No." It is not a heroic answer. It comes out almost angry, as if he resents being told to become a coward in his own home. She steps toward him, voice low and sharp, telling him he does not understand what stands outside. He answers equally low that perhaps not, but he understands enough to know men do not surround a bakery at midnight for a simple traveler. The third strike hits before either can say more. Dust sifts from the top beam. The old lock groans. Varaka moves fast then, not toward the door, but toward the work table where Bren has kept his flour ledgers and spare cloth. From beneath her folded cloak she pulls a small wrapped bundle, no larger than a man's hand. She stares at it for half, a breath, then thrusts it toward him. "If I fall," she says, "do not let them take this." Bren takes it without thinking. It is heavier than it looks, solid, important, dangerous. Before he can ask what it is, the front door finally breaks inward with a crack of wood and iron. 3 orcs enter first, armored in dark leather and steel, broad enough to make the bakery feel like a child's room. They carry themselves with military discipline, not the wild brutality Bracken Hollow whispers about. Behind them steps a 4th figure, older, scarred, and grim-faced, his eyes fixed entirely on Varaka. There is recognition there, but no warmth, only duty sharpened into cruelty. Bren backs toward the oven, the wrapped object hidden beneath his apron. Heat rolls against his legs. Flour dust hangs pale in the air. The scarred orc speaks in their language first. Varaka answers him with controlled contempt. Bren cannot understand the words, but he understands the shape of them. This is no random pursuit. This is history. Rank, betrayal unfinished. Then the scarred one switches to human speech, his gaze flicking to Bren as if measuring how little he matters. "You fed what was not yours to keep," he says. "Stand aside." Bren's throat tightens, but he does not move. Varaka glances at him then, just once. In that look is warning, frustration, and something else now. Something more dangerous than gratitude. Trust, thin and terrible. And when the first hunter steps forward, Bren realizes with sudden clarity that whatever happens next will burn the life he knew to the ground. The first movement is so fast, Bren barely understands it. One of the hunters lunges across the flour-dusted floor, and Varaka meets him before steel can fully clear its sheath. She strikes with the kind of force that makes the room seem too small to contain her. The table slams sideways. A bowl shatters. Hot sparks jump from the oven mouth as Bren stumbles back, clutching the wrapped token beneath his apron like a second heart. He has never seen anyone move like this. Until now, Varaka has been hunger, silence, restraint. Now, Bren sees what she must have been before betrayal and poison dragged her through the mud to his door. She does not fight wildly. She fights like command itself, precise, economical, merciless only where necessary. Every turn of her body has purpose. Every blow lands with trained intent. Even weakened, she makes the armed men hesitate. But weakened is not the same as whole. Bren sees it in the shortened breath she tries to hide, in the slight drag of one foot after each hard movement, in the way one hand tightens near her ribs when the others close in together. She can still terrify them. She cannot do this forever. The scarred leader stays back at first, watching, calculating. He does not waste effort on pride. He waits for exhaustion to do what swords have not yet done. "Enough," he says sharply in the orc tongue. Varaka answers him without looking away from the other two. Her voice is iron. Bren does not know the words, but he knows defiance when he hears it. One hunter circles toward the side shelf, trying to force her away from the oven corner and toward the broken doorway. Another advances low, blade ready, testing the weakness in her stance. Bren understands suddenly that standing still will kill them both. He is no warrior. He knows that better than anyone. But this is his bakery, his oven, his floor, his heat, his smoke. His hands stop shaking. He grabs the hanging peel, hooks it hard against the iron pot above the fire, and yanks. The pot crashes down in a burst of steam and ash across the nearest hunter's face. The man recoils with a roar. In the same breath, Bren kicks a sack of flour open across the boards. White dust bursts into the air, thick and blinding. Varaka does not waste the chance. She drives one attacker backward into the wall so hard the shelves rattle. The second she disarms with a brutal twist that sends steel skidding under the table. For one flashing moment, it seems possible that they might break through and run. Then the scarred leader steps in. He is older than the others, but not slower. His first strike lands against Varaka's guard with enough force to shake her whole. Frame! This is no mere pursuer. This is someone who knows her style, someone who has watched her train, perhaps once even served under her. That makes it worse. Betrayal lives more cleanly in the hands of the familiar. Their clash changes the room. This is no longer a desperate defense against faceless enemies. It is something older, sharper, personal. He speaks to her between blows, his voice low and contemptuous. Bren catches only one word repeated more than once in human-accented speech. Dishonored. Varaka's answer comes like a cut. Liar. The fight drives them apart, nearer the broken doorway, then back toward the oven again. Bren sees her slipping, not in skill, in strength. The poison, the cold road, the days of hunger, they are collecting their debt now. One more minute maybe. 2. And it will not matter how skilled she is. The scarred leader sees it too. His gaze flicks once toward Bren. That is the moment Bren understands the true shape of the threat. They do not only want Varaka dead or captured, they want leverage. They want the human who fed her, sheltered her, and now stands in the middle of clan business with frightened eyes and flour on his sleeves. The leader moves suddenly, not toward Varaka, but toward Bren. Bren barely gets the peel up in time. Steel bites wood. The impact jars both arms to the shoulder. He stumbles into the workbench, breath knocked out of him. The wrapped token nearly slips from beneath his apron. The leader's eyes drop at once. So that is what they came for. Before Bren can recover, the orc seizes his collar and throws him sideways. He crashes into the flour chest, pain exploding through his ribs. The room blurs. He hears Varaka shout, no longer cold, no longer controlled, but raw with something that sounds frighteningly close to fear. She reaches Bren an instant too late. To stop the second strike, but not too late to take it herself. The blade meant for him cuts across her side. Not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to turn the floor dark. Everything stops inside Bren. Not the fight, not the room. Only whatever quiet part of him once believed this could still end with simple escape. Varaka kills the moment after that. Not in madness, not in rage without thought, in decision. She turns on the scarred leader with a force that strips the last restraint from the room. He meets her steel, but he is now the one driven backward. The remaining hunter tries to flank her. Bren, half-dazed, hurls the broken stool into the man's knees and buys her one heartbeat more. One heartbeat is enough. Varaka slams the leader against the cracked doorframe, blade at his throat, her own blood soaking through torn leather. He laughs even then, ragged and ugly. "You still choose weakness," he says in human speech, glancing toward Bren. "A human baker. For this, you would lose your house? Varaka's face changes, not softer, more final. Bren sees in that instant that something has shifted beyond survival. This is no longer only about reaching the north, or proving betrayal, or staying alive, long enough to reclaim a name. This is about what kind of person she will be if she walks out of this room. The leader sees it too, and tries one last bargain. "Surrender the token," he says. "Come quietly. The human lives. Refuse, and he dies first." For one terrible heartbeat, silence holds. Bren is on one knee, breathless, bruised, useless by every ordinary measure. Yet when Varaka looks at him, he does not plead. He does not beg her to yield for his sake. He only reaches beneath his torn apron, pulls out the wrapped token, and stares at it once. This is the thing men are willing to kill for, the thing she hid, the thing that could return her to power, or bury her beneath it. He rises unsteadily and crosses the space between them. Every eye follows the motion of his hand. Then he places the token back into Varaka's blood-slick palm. No bargain. No demand, no question. "It belongs with you," he says. The words are simple, but they break something open in the room. The scarred leader lunges in that instant, desperate and reckless. Varaka moves before thought can catch up. Her blade turns. The struggle ends hard against the shattered threshold. When it is over, the leader falls to his knees, stunned more by failure than pain. The surviving hunter, seeing the token in her hand and something unshakable in her stance, hesitates for the first time. Not because she is strongest in the room, because now she is believed. Varaka's chest rises and falls in ragged breaths. Blood darkens her side. Her hand closes around the token as though it were both burden and proof. Then she looks at Bren. All the walls between them, pride, fear, suspicion, distance, have burned down in one night. Outside, the alley lies silent beneath winter dark. The bakery door hangs broken. The town will know by dawn. There will be no more hiding, no more pretending she is a nameless traveler, and he is only a baker who made one kind mistake. This is bigger now, dangerous in ways Bracken Hollow cannot contain. Varaka steps toward him, pale but standing. When she speaks, her voice is rougher than before, stripped clean of disguise. "If I run north now," she says, "I can still challenge what was stolen from me." Her fingers tighten around the token. "If I fail, I die." Bren says nothing. She looks at the ruined bakery, at the blood on the floorboards, at the door that can no longer protect either of them. Then her gaze returns to him, steady and unreadable. "If you stay here, they will come again," she says, "and next time they will not ask." The truth settles between them with the weight of a closing gate. By saving her once, Bren changed her fate. By trusting her now, he has destroyed his old life completely, and before the sun rises over Bracken Hollow, both of them will have to choose what comes next. Before dawn fully breaks over Bracken Hollow, Bren makes the choice that costs him everything familiar. He does not choose it with heroic speeches or reckless certainty. He chooses it while standing in the wreckage of his bakery with blood drying. On the floorboards, flour turned to paste beneath his boots, and the last safe shape of his old life already gone. The townspeople will talk. The magistrate will ask questions. The hunters who survive will carry word north and south alike. Even if Varaka vanishes before sunrise, Bren knows the town will never see him as the same harmless baker again. He fed an orc, hid her, fought for her. In Bracken Hollow, that alone is enough to make a man a stranger in the place he was born. So when Varaka says she will leave at first light, and that he must stay if he wishes to survive, Bren looks at the broken doorway and understands there is no staying. Not truly. He goes with her. The journey north is not romantic in any easy way. It is cold, dangerous, and often silent. Varaka's wound slows them. Bren's inexperience nearly gets them lost twice. They sleep in ruined watch shelters beneath pines heavy with snow, and once inside the shell of an abandoned shrine where the wind cries through cracked stone like a living thing. Yet somewhere on that road, the bond between them becomes too real to deny. Not because they speak of love, but because of what they begin to do without thinking. Bren wakes before dawn to warm her cloak by the fire before she rises. Varaka chooses the outer edge of every camp, so any danger must reach her first. He cleans and rebinds her side when the wound opens. She teaches him which mountain paths hide old clan markers, and which silences mean she is hurting more than she will admit. Their trust grows not in grand moments, but in repeated acts of care. When they finally reach the northern stronghold of House Karzag, Bren enters a world that was never made for men like him. Black stone towers rise from the mountain like old teeth. Orc warriors watch him with open contempt. Servants pause mid-step to stare. To them he is soft, undersized, and absurdly fragile beside Varaka. Worse, he is human, yet he stays. He does not pretend bravery. He simply refuses to leave her to stand alone. The challenge that follows is brutal, public, and final. Before clan witnesses, Varaka presents the token and names the betrayal done to her. The men who tried to erase her answer with lies, rank, and old fear. They call her weakened. They mock her for returning with a human at her side. They demand she prove herself worthy not only of command, but of her own blood. She does, not easily, not cleanly. What victory costs her is written afterward across her body in scars and in the grim new weight of leadership. But the truth is forced into the open. The poison, the ambush, the theft of lawful claim, the murder arranged beneath false peace, all of it comes to light. The house that cast her out is broken and remade. The men who hunted her fall by law, by blade, or by shame, and Bren, by simply standing beside her and speaking honestly of what he saw, changes something that strength alone could not. He becomes the living proof that mercy did not weaken Varaka. It saved her. Still, victory does not make things simple. Varaka is restored, but not to the same life she lost. She becomes something harder and better, a leader who understands how easily power rots when it forgets the helpless. Bren is offered gold, escort, and safe passage south. No one would blame him for taking it. To remain means a lifetime of whispers, distrust, and the knowledge that loving Varaka will never be easy. He will always be the human in an orc hall. She will always be the war-born woman whose heart bent where it was never meant to. They choose each other anyway, not in a blaze of ceremony, not with a perfect promise that mends every difference. Between their worlds, they choose each other in a quieter, dearer way. Varaka does not claim him as a reward, and Bren does not ask her to lay down the duty she bled to reclaim. Instead, she offers him a place at her fire, freely, publicly, before those who once sneered at the sight of him. And Bren, who spent most of his life being overlooked, accepts not because she is powerful, but because with her he is seen fully and without shame. Seasons pass. Trade begins to change between the stronghold and the southern roads. Human merchants come more often under safer banners. Orc guards escort them instead of threatening them. In the lower kitchens of the mountain hall, Bren teaches young cooks how to coax warmth and softness from grain at high altitude, and slowly, impossibly, the smell of fresh bread becomes part of a place once known only for iron, smoke, and war. One winter morning, long after the blood and fear of Bracken Hollow have become memory, Bren stands beside a great stone oven built into the heart of the stronghold. Snow falls beyond the open archway. Warriors cross the courtyard. The mountain. Wind carries the scent of pine and frost. He draws a golden loaf from the fire and sets it on the table to cool. A shadow falls across the doorway. Varaka enters in dark furs and worn steel, no longer hunted, no longer starving, no longer alone. There are scars on her now that were not there before. There is also peace in her face, the hard-earned kind. She says nothing at first. She comes to the table, tears the warm loaf in half with her hands, and gives one piece to Bren. The first time he offered her bread, she took it with shame, hunger, and distrust. Now she places it in his hand like a vow, and in that simple, quiet moment, while snow drifts outside and the oven glows behind them, both of them understand the final truth of what love cost them. It took the lives they thought they would live, and gave them a home neither could have reached alone.